In this episode of the Encourage Inspire podcast, I'm joined by music executive, music publisher, author, and political activist Capriccieo Scates. Man, this is a great episode, man. Capriccio and I actually got connected through, I'm sure, conferences that I've attended. We've just been in the same room quite a few times, man. And this brother's always been a cat that I respect from his background in the industry. So this was something that I really enjoyed to chop it up with. We talked about his work, as a first starting out um, as a promotional guy in the early part of his career, to eventually working in the PRO space, to then as a music publisher representing songwriters and producers, and then also his work in being in the political world and some of the awards that he's won. There's so many I can't even go through them all. So guys, just this guy's a great guy, great episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. Take care. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Encourage Inspire podcast. This is episode number 66 and the start of season 3 of the podcast. And I got a very special guest with me today, Mr. Capriccio Scates. How you doing, man?
I am excellent, sir. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Hey man, it's a pleasure, man. You're somebody who I've been in several rooms with over the years, listen to you talk and share knowledge, but we've never really got a chance to sit down and really chop it up. And you've done so much in the industry and outside the industry as well too. And so I thought it would be great to have you. This podcast is really, I cover 3 things usually. I might talk about disability awareness because obviously I've got a disability. I talk about music business topics to help independent artists. And the third one is to interview people that encourage and inspire me, because I named my company Double M Management and Marketing Group because I love to encourage and inspire people.
Makes
And
sense.
uh, and so that's why, and I didn't want to name my company after me. I felt like that's boring. A lot of people do that. So I wanted to say, okay, when you say double, oh, that makes sense. So it's a conversation starter. So, that's kind of always been my mo right there. So
Got it.
cool, cool, man. So yeah, so you're originally from Chicago.
Absolutely. Chi-town.
Yeah, definitely. One of the artists that I manage, Xavier Keys, is from Chicago.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah. So we've been working together for quite a few years now. So yeah, so it's interesting because I'm a Cub fan. They're like how you born in New York, raised in Orlando, and you're a Cub fan? I said it's easy because down here in Orlando in the late '90s, you had WGN if you wanted to, and you saw the Cubs play. So
Absolutely.
it was either the Cubs, the Sox, or the Braves because we had TBS. So Sammy Sosa played for the Cubs at the time. So I'm a Cub fan.
Well, interestingly, I'm actually a Cubs and a White Sox fan, which is actually taboo. You're
Yeah,
supposed to be either or, but
right.
I'm a fan of all Chicago teams.
Understood. 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 Love it. Awesome, man. Awesome. And I always love to ask my guests this question, man. What's your earliest memories of music? What do you remember as your earliest memories of music?
My earliest memory of music is when I was about 5 years old. I started playing drums in church. Now,
Okay.
not to say that I was playing that well, but I was doing something. And I
Okay.
can remember in particular this one time where I got on the drum set and I could see my grandmother sitting to the left of
Okay.
me and just smiling. And I remember feeling so happy that I could make my grandmother smile to see her excited about me playing drums. I mean, that's probably my very first memory of music and being involved in the music per se.
Man, I love that. That's a great. And I had that written down here too. That you started definitely as a drummer.
Yeah.
So you were drumming. So I know you got your start as far as when you pivoted kind of like to the business side and promotions. So you were
Yeah.
for Sony Music, Death Row Records, Tommy Boy, Universal Music Group, Atlantic Records. For artists like Alicia Keys, Boyz II Men, Bone Thugs and Harmony, people like that. So what?
Absolutely.
So what was it that made you wanted to shift to kind of the executive side, from the creative side, maybe, or from the playing music side?
I don't know if I wanted to shift. I don't think that I was probably that good of a musician. So I
Gotcha.
had to find a
Okay,
way to stay in the business. So
I
that's
understood.
probably what actually happened is I don't know that I was as good as I would have liked to have been as a musician. So therefore I found myself doing more business.
That's cool. I like that. I like that, man. And like I said, you've done so many great things, and as you were going on the promotions, that ultimately led to a position you had as director of national radio promotions for Rough House in Columbia with artists again, great names: Fuji, Cypress Hill, Chris Cross, people like that. So we're
Yeah,
talking about big names here, names that people know. So I mean, and I had this question, when you came in the game, radio was the way you got to the masses. Radio was the way you had
absolutely.
you had to talk. It's the only way you could touch the people really through radio. But my question is the industry's changed? And I like to use this podcast to teach, right, as well as
Uh-huh.
tell stories. But we like to teach here.
Right.
So how do you think radio? You think terrestrial radio is still effective for, or how does it affect? You think the independent artists versus the major artists? What would
Well,
you say?
terrestrial radio is still a factor, believe it or not. In fact, there's still evidence and a correlation between terrestrial radio and streaming and sales and that whole thing. So there's definitely still relevancy as it relates to terrestrial radio. The problem for many is that it's expensive to actually
Absolutely.
compete at that level. So
Right.
many people don't have that level, and there's other ways to impact the market at this particular point. So it
Yeah.
just is definitely still one of the major components, though.
For sure. No, you're exactly right. It just costs too much money for the independent artist who's trying to build a career. A lot of stuff that I teach is how to turn interested fans into supporters, right? And for for,
Mm,
for artists to, yeah, that's all I teach when I'm coaching consulting clients. We talk about how to take your interested fan. Okay, that's what they are. They're interested fans, and we got to turn them into somebody else wants to pay. So that's
absolutely.
ultimately that's the shift, right? So
Yeah.
when they like you, and then when they start to pay is when it becomes real, right? But the only reason why they pay is because of the relationship. Because unfortunately in today's industry, the product that we're selling is free.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, not my words, but I read an article that referred to this generation as freetard. Not my word,
Right,
but one of the things that we've been having to do now is recondition the mindset of the consumer because they've been used
right,
to getting everything for free. Now we have to
right.
sort of change that mindset a little bit.
Absolutely. And that's why, and I say the way we do that is by the relationship. Because when they feel like they have a relationship with you, they'll buy, you know,
Yeah.
and that's a process though. That's a process. It's not as simple. I tell people all the time, you do when somebody comes into your world, the last thing you want to do is immediately try to sell to them. Because
Right.
they're just not going to be interested. Like that's the way to do it. You have to establish value, just like any other industry. You have to establish value before people actually become interested in what you're doing.
Yeah, and music now in particular is more about a brand than anything. The question becomes, can we call American Express, T-Mobile, Nike, and do this cool thing on Sunday while we listen to your music? So it's more about the brand value more so than it is even about the music. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
music sells everything except music at this point.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. That's yeah, you're exactly right. Record companies were never didn't used to be in the business of building brands. They sold music. That's what we did. That's what you did.
correct, correct.
And so now you have to be a brand. And I've always felt like record companies at this point looking for artists. They're in the mergers and acquisitions business. You
No
know what I mean?
question,
You know what I
no
mean? Like,
question,
so you got to get yourself from 0 to 60. They don't
no question.
care. They don't care before you're exec. So I mean, you could speak because I've never worked for in a major label system, so I can't speak from personal. But I just understand from my knowledge and experience in the game that um, they just don't care. Because the way they're looking at it is you have the same access to the same tools we have. So you know what I
For the
mean.
most
So
part, yeah.
yeah. So you
With the
got to
exception of the capital.
Absolutely. Right. That's the only thing that makes it.
But today's business has become more about three screens: the TV screen, the computer screen, and the telephone screen, and how effectively you can engage those areas.
Absolutely.
So the music
Absolutely.
business now is right here. You know, we walk around
Absolutely.
with it in our hands every single day.
Absolutely. 'Cause I tend to say I stopped using the word recording artist. You're a content creator with a focus on music.
Nice.
That's what I say. Because
Makes sense.
you think about it. Whitney Houston, he's the artist that you mentioned in your bio. They didn't have to worry about content. Content wasn't the one that they had to worry about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These days, you can't put a record out and not have a content strategy behind it. It's
Yeah.
just
It's but you know, I will say this: it's the best time in history to be in music, though.
absolutely. I agree.
At no time in history could you literally go down to your basement and 2 o'clock in the morning catch a vibe, put together a song, and then at 3 o'clock in 2.5 seconds hit send and touch the entire world. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's no time in history that you could actually do that. So now this is really the best time in music if
Right.
you understand content and how
Yeah.
to leverage that content and to properly manage the content. You know, because it's
Absolutely.
one thing to hit send and touch the world, but it's another thing to not have it registered at ASCAP, BMI, CSAC,
Oh my God.
Sound
Right.
Exchange, you know that. So the business part has to meet up with that same level of intensity. But
Cap,
it's a great time to be in music.
I totally agree. You're speaking the same language I speak, and you're exactly right. There's there's three things I like to say. There's the music industry, there's the music business, there's the business of music. Got to be
Right,
navigated three different ways. And most
right,
people are still chasing the industry. The tastemakers, the DJs. Don't get me wrong; these are still influential people.
sure.
But you don't necessarily need the music industry to be successful in the music business if you understand the business of music.
Well, the one thing that I always like to ask people is, you know, if I'm in a room with folks, I'll say, how many of you are familiar with Sarah McLachlan? And not that many people will say that they're familiar with her, but they probably have heard their song. But the point
Right.
that I make is that whether you're familiar with her or not, she sold 33 million records around the world. So she didn't need you if you don't know her. What she needed to do was find her audience and then market to those specific people that was interested in her. And so that's really
Absolutely.
what you have to do now, more so than anything, is find your audience.
Absolutely. That's why the premise of my brand, and I talk about this if you go through my social media, core audience, and the framework that I created is called the Genesis of Superfan Building. So I'm not a fan of just saying, put your music out and run ads. I just don't think that's the way you should teach or share with new artists today. I care about the foundational pieces, the
Mm.
foundational building. That's how I set myself apart. The knowledge is the knowledge I'm sharing is it's not my necessarily knowledge. It's just the way I package it and I promote it and I teach it.
Sure.
But
Sure.
at the end of the day, like you said, it's about finding your audience and super serving them. I think that there's 8 billion people on the planet. You don't need
Yeah.
everybody. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? You don't need everybody. So I think this, like you said, this is the best time to do it your way, right? And your age doesn't matter. I have a couple of clients right now that I work with that are in their 50s, and they want to. And I told them this. I said, you better get comfortable with making content because they always say
Yeah.
artists who tell me, Cap, that they hate social media. That's like, why? It doesn't make sense to me because it's just like it's not changing. Like, so it's not going to go back to how it used to be.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
you better become comfortable with creating content. And the beautiful thing about your social channels is you get to promote what you want to talk about. What
Well, the
matters.
other thing too is I think that it's important how you represent your brand as well, because as
Absolutely.
you start to move into the future, or we start to move into the future, the way that your brand is positioned is going to matter a great deal to other bigger brands. So in order
Absolutely.
to leverage that, I think it's important that, you know, how you represent yourself is you know is number one, is paramount to what your success will look like in the future.
I totally agree, man. I totally agree. Totally agree. So yeah, so and then so going back to your story a little bit, so in 2006, you stepped in the PRO space and you
Yeah,
became the director, writer, publisher of relations for CSAC.
yeah,
CSAC PRO, which is the one PRO. We have three PROs in America, but that's the one that you have to be invited to. You know,
right.
to be a part of. And you were part of Atlanta's first satellite office. and responsible for recruiting songwriters and publishers, man. And I'll say this, man, publishing is probably the most, unless you deal with it every day, it's a case by case situation. And
Hmm.
by no means am I an expert in publishing. You know, I know enough about it to have a conversation where
Sure.
I'm intelligent enough about it, but it can be very it's complicated. Probably the most complicated part of the business, if I should say so myself.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people, unfortunately, the music business, no matter what you do, whether you're an attorney, a manager, writer, artist, you play guitar, doesn't matter. The music business is going to boil down to two things, and those two things are copyrights and masters. Who
Yeah.
owns the copyright? Who controls the master? Who controls the master? Who owns the copyright?
Right.
That's the entire music business. So,
Right. Right.
unfortunately, the fundamental flaw I see with most artists is that they want to be famous, and so
Right.
there's a little
Right.
word show and a big word
We're in
business, and
business.
most people are fundamentally they're trapped in show, and so that's the
Absolutely.
issue that I find with most artists.
Absolutely. Speaking on that, I tell artists all the time, you got to be comfortable with selling. Sell is part of the game. You got to be
Yeah,
comfortable with selling. You know, when a potential client comes to me, Cap, I give them a free. They don't have to pay any money to talk to me for the very first
right,
time. I don't
right,
charge a dollar because I'm interviewing them. But I guarantee myself, I guarantee them, once you get off the call with me, we jump on a Zoom, just like we're recording this podcast right now. I
right.
guarantee you're going to want to work with me because I know, and
Nice.
I know how to close you. So, like for instance, if an artist is doing a show, I always tell them work that room. When you get
Yeah,
after you get off that stage, work that room. Do not get off the stage and go grab a drink and sit in the corner somewhere. Work that room and shake hands and kiss babies. At the end of the day,
absolutely,
this is a people business.
absolutely.
This is a people business, you know. So, and you have to be okay with selling. I think artists have this thing in their mind where like, I don't like to sell. Well, guess what? We're all in sales. Every single human being is in sales. We sell every day.
Absolutely.
We sell every day, whether we
Yeah,
like to think we do or not. We're in sales, but you have to become comfortable with selling. Now, there's a time and place to ask for the money, but you have to become comfortable, like you said, the business part, you know,
yeah.
and things of that nature. Like you said, understanding the business, and I like to. I know the answer to this, but you know, when it comes to publishing, you know, there's two main types of publishing deals that most people sign, right? A co-publishing deal, an admin deal, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So how so my question is, you know, first this, you know, because this is what you know how to do. Why don't we break down the difference between both of those, and then ask what's the real job of the publisher? Because I think people might have some misconceptions of what the real job of the publisher is.
So the first thing leading into that, I would say that corporate America has what's called a 401k plan. The music business has publishing.
Right,
So the equivalent to the 401k in corporate America in music's definition is really called publishing. And
right,
it's really sort of where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, or for lack of better words. Um, all of the revenue that's being generated is all sort of evolving around those areas of copyrights and masters, which encompasses publishing as well. And so when we talk about co-publishing, you're really talking about a partnership between the publisher and the writer, and that writer is being co-published by that publisher. And as part of those responsibility of the publisher, they're doing things like administrating the catalog, making sure that the copyrights are being filed, making sure that the songs are being registered at ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. And for that, they're participating and they're taking a part of the copyright ownership as part of being the co-publisher. And so
right,
that's a 50, they're taking 50% of the publishing for that work that they're providing.
right,
But then outside of that, you can do or have a situation that's just admin only, administration only, meaning that the publisher is just only factored in as an administrator, but they don't actually have ownership of the copyright.
right. And in that case, usually with admin deals, because that's what most songwriters want, right? They want the admin, right? Because
Well,
it's
typically when I run into writers, they're trying to either get a deal, the ones that don't have a deal, and the ones that have a deal are trying to get out of the deal. So
got you.
I think most of the writers are looking or think they want a co-publishing deal, but they may not particularly understand all the ins and outs of how that deal actually works.
Absolutely, right? And so now, and I'm saying, see, we used to have something called the MDRC, right? The
Yeah.
minimum delivery requirement code, which what I'm hearing is that they're trying to do away with those now. Because that used to
Yeah,
get people caught up, right?
yeah, I mean, I think there are being a number of things that are being introduced, some ways to actually sort of craft these deals and make it, make the deals make more sense in this new media world that we're in.
Right,
Because I think new media is really now media because it's happening right now. But I think the term new media was something in the distant future. So we were talking about ringtones, ringback, MySpace, all the ancillary areas that were considered new media. But now we're moving into NFTs and the metaverse and all these other different facets. I mean, who knows what's really going on? So I think a lot of the publishers, the industry is trying to sort of adapt and move at the pace of what's happening throughout the world because the world's growing and changing, and so should the music industry.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that publishing, like you said, it's the retirement, and we see a lot of major acts who have catalogs that are making money are essentially selling their catalog to these big hedge funds and people who have tons of
Sure,
money. Because
sure.
some of them don't really want to tour anymore. They don't, or they don't really want to do what they used to have to do. So essentially, like you said before, they're kind of cashing on their retirement a little bit early. Some of them are not selling their full catalog, so they might be selling portions of their catalog, but they're still getting a
Right,
nice chunk of change at the end of the day. But keep in mind, you have to have a catalog that's already generating a type of money. You know what I mean? In my
right,
opinion,
right.
for
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
There has to be viability there in order to make those deals make sense.
yeah,
I mean, it's sort of like hitting the lottery. If you hit the lottery, you can take the cash option or you can take it amortized over a period of time. And so,
yeah,
as what we're doing in essence, when we do some of these deals, we're taking the cash option. And
right,
sometimes I hate to see people cash out early because in essence, they're leveraging themselves out of the business because a lot
right.
of things that are happening, that value is going to even increase over the next 5 to 10 years. So
Absolutely, no, it's
I would
true.
caution to be careful with some of those deals early.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Because one thing with a song with the copyright, man, it's one of those things where it doesn't go down. The copyright stays where it is, and it can only increase. It can't really decrease. You know,
Yeah, I mean, well, it
it
can to a
can
degree,
degree. Yeah,
depending upon the valuation and what's actually happening with that particular song. But
right,
if it's being exploited, a good word, and when we're
right,
talking about music publishing, if it's being
right,
properly exploited and worked,
right.
the value is certainly going to increase, or
And
at
that,
least it should increase.
and that's what I want to talk about as far as the publishing. Because some people say that, okay, my publisher isn't working my songs or working my catalog,
Yeah,
right? Is it
yeah.
the publisher's job in the co-pub situation to work the catalog? You
Well,
know,
let's just say it's certainly in their best interest. Now, whether if it works out to be their job per se, may be up for discussion. But I personally think, yes, that's part of what they should be doing. They should be exploiting the catalog and making sure that those opportunities are being sought out as it relates to synchronization opportunities, placement opportunities, and whatever else they may be able to find. But, I think it's just each deal, these things are case by case. And so you never get what you worth, only what you negotiate. And so
absolutely,
that's really,
absolutely.
it's depending on who you're dealing with and what's happening in that particular agreement.
I totally agree, man. I totally agree. For sure, for sure. Now, cool things here. You're the author of a couple of books, The 10 Steps to Successfully Managing Recording Artists, and then the 11th step I missed. Also,
Right.
so 2000, first one you did was 2004. The
Yeah.
next one you did was 2018. And what I found
Yeah.
out is interesting is that's essentially two different industries because '04 is like it's '04 we were still we weren't all the way digital yet, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And 2018, I mean, obviously we're digital. So how would you, how do you feel like the role of an artist manager? Because I'm a manager myself, and the way I'm a personal manager, and the way I like to say it, it's like family. That's how I look at it.
Right.
I don't look at the artists I work with as my clients because to me, if we're in the trenches together, it's like no, we got to believe in each other. You know what I mean?
I agree. Absolutely.
So, and I haven't had a chance to read your books, and I'm going to read them. But for the sake of this conversation, how do you feel like it's changed the role of an artist manager from the first book you wrote in '04 to the second one you wrote, or does it correlate?
I think there's a very strong correlation. And what really happened for me, my understanding changed in the sense of the value of people and understanding what's inside of the music beyond just music. Because in that music, there's families, there's wives, there's husbands, there's dogs, there's cats. There's much more to it than just music. And so for the 11th step I missed, it was important that I talked about the order of God, family, and work. Prior to that, learning that 11th step, I put it in this pot and I stir it all up and I say, don't be looking at my pot. I got this. Well, I didn't know that inside of that pot, there was order. There's, God, whatever you subscribe to, whatever your beliefs are, the universe, whatever that may be,
Mm-hmm.
family, and then work and prioritizing them accordingly. When I was at CSAC, for example,
Mm-hmm.
I signed a writer who got married, had a baby, and got divorced in the same year. She
Oh
stood
my
in my
gosh.
office crying, and I was like, I didn't even know what to say.
Right.
Another young lady came to my office and said, my mom's dying. Can you come to my house and explain to her how music publishing works? And I'm like, okay. So I show up. Her mom's laying in bed. She's for what we know, she's actually dying.
Right.
And we're going through this process of me explaining to her how her daughters wrote these great songs and how we're going to collect this money and she's going to be okay. And literally 2 weeks after that, her mom died.
Oh
And
wow.
so these things started to happen while I was at CSAC, which really gave me a different understanding of the music and what goes into it than just only music. When
Right.
I first got
Right.
in the industry, I had three goals. One was to afford to take my kids to Disneyland.
Okay.
One was to get a record company tour jacket because I saw my friend with one and I thought it was cool.
Right.
And the other
Okay.
was to call a label and whoever would answer on the other end would know my name. And I felt like, man, if I could accomplish those three things, I'd be successful.
Right.
Well, in 2008, I went to speak at the GMWA Gospel Music Workshop of America,
Okay.
and I go down and I get ready to get there. Before I leave, I call my son. I said, yo, let's go to Disneyland. And he said, Dad, I'm 20. I don't want to go. Somewhere in my mind, I didn't realize that all that time went by. He was still 5 years older than me, and I was on this thing going, okay, I got to win a Grammy, I got to win a Dove Award, I got to win a Stellar, I got to
Right.
and 20 years went by before I
Wow.
could afford to take my kid. Now, before where it didn't matter, like, let's go, it's 20 stacks, it's 30 stacks, let's go, I got you. Man, 20 years went by. So I go, I do my presentation, I get back to my hotel room and I cry like a baby because I made it, but I made it by myself. And that was never my intention. And so
Mm.
that's part of the 11th step that I did not
Mm.
know. Because look, everybody's focused on getting it. I'm gonna get a Grammy. I'm gonna win American Music Award. I'm gonna win a Dove. You get a wife, a mansion, a Bentley. You don't maintain it. You get divorced, foreclosed, and repo. And so that's the 11th step. That even though it's still talking about management. The biggest part is understanding what goes into the actual ownership of all that stuff and making sure that everybody's properly managed.
Man, that bro, that is so wow. You hit so many things that just resonate with me right there because that's what I believe in, man. How we treat the artists we work with in a management role. It's different from a
Yes.
consultant role because
Yes.
you do both, right? So, but when you're managing, there's so we have to think about the mentality, the psychology of that. How do we understand how they matter, how they think, right? It's so much more than just get your head out of your tail, let's go, because everybody doesn't respond well to that.
Sure.
And,
Absolutely.
and that's part of what makes me good at what I do is I love people and I'm able to really understand and talk to people and get people to trust me. So when it comes to Xavier Keys is the one who I've been working with the longest as of late. His personalities is just a little different, right? So our personalities mesh. Because he might not like me saying this on the podcast, but he doesn't really do well um, with when it comes to I don't use with anxiety, but when it comes to having to deal with tough situations sometimes and you,
Sure.
and you need and so he kind of leans on me to be able to be there, talk him through things and things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important for a personal manager, you know, versus because like I said, there's different types of management. There's a personal manager. You might be signed to a management company like a Rock Nation, but you might have your personal manager that kind of handles everything else.
Yeah, the
You
day
know
to
what I
day
mean?
guy.
Right. So I'm more of a day to day guy. You know, and I'm just very selective because it just matters. It matters to me. People think naturally because I have a management company that I'm looking to manage a million artists, and I used to be that guy that wanted to do that when I first started.
Sure,
And then
sure.
you know what I realized? I realized it was about me building a brand.
Absolutely.
That's what I realized. So that my path to success isn't predicated on my artists having success because what happens when they want to quit and go do something else?
Oh my God, that was one of the biggest lessons I learned in management. I was running around with the artists sort of in front like this, and then every time they didn't like the artist, we all kept getting kicked out, and so I had to switch it. And I
Mm-hmm.
started walking around like this. So they don't like the artist, cool, I'm still in there. They don't like the
And
artist, cool, I'm still. So
exactly.
that was a huge lesson I learned over
Yeah, it's
that point you
important.
just made.
My mentor Alan Johnston, I'm sure you know
Oh
him.
yeah, of course.
Yeah, he told me one time we was in a conference. He said, "Darrell, whatever you do, brand yourself."
Yeah,
He said, "Brand yourself because artists come and they go, but you will always be okay." So when I would go to conferences like me, them right,
yep, yep, yep.
even though my artists that I work with were there, they would sit in their own meetings. I would
Yeah,
sit in my meetings so
yeah.
that I would have the contacts for me. Now we still help, we still facilitate what we normally do, but I'm making sure I'm leaving there with contacts that help me, right?
Well, you got to always keep in mind, artists have a tendency to feel like they're being done wrong. So that's just the nature of artists. So
Right.
Michael Jackson said Sony was the devil. So that's just the nature of artists.
Right. Hold on. Cool. Yeah. So I totally agree, man. That you're right. That's the nature of artists. They're not always being done wrong. I think there was a time in the industry where you had to prove yourself. Like if you have no leverage, there's no way there's no way the lawyer. Because let's be real. Let's talk about black music for a second. When they used to have black music departments, right? So there was a time where most people who come from inner city, they don't got no money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they can't
Yep.
afford an attorney. So what happens? Oh, use our attorney. Not understanding that attorney using their attorney is going to help you because essentially that attorneys negotiate against themselves and who can write the bigger check.
Conflict. Yeah.
Right, who can write
Yeah.
the bigger check? Of course, the label is going to write the bigger check, so they're going to want to get the bigger percentage. So, but that's just how it was. So you had TLC and Skate. They all said back then they signed not so favorable deals.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you first get in the game,
And
you
then I
know,
think also artists are romanticized by their own talent. So that factors in as well.
absolute. Talk about that for a second, man. Talk about what that means, man.
Just artists, and it's rightfully so. They should feel that they are the best thing since sliced bread or peanut butter and jelly or whatever the case may be. But I think they often get caught up in the fact that just how good they are, thinking that translates to money per se, or translates to how people should treat them. But it doesn't always work that way. So
Absolutely. And I tell people today, when you're getting in the music industry, it's a slow burn. It's a slow,
yeah,
it's a slow burn because you remember a time where they gave out development deals. They gave you $500,000 to develop you,
yeah.
and they're not doing that these days. So the new development deal is called get a job.
Yeah, well, it's just a different time. I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
the labels don't really have the manpower to even
yeah,
develop an artist like they once did. So it's just a
yeah.
different time period. But
Right.
again, it's the best time to be in music if you understand the value of content and how to
Abs,
manage it all.
absolutely, man. Content is an enemy. Content is an enemy. And here's what I will say. I always like to say there's two types of artists in the marketplace. There's trendy artists who are on trend, and then there's talented artists. So usually the trendy artists, we'll call those the TikTokers, we'll call those the people that kind of, they catch a wave, they're on the trend, right? But so they're getting quick success. And let's say you're not so trendy, you have more of a message, a grassroots type thing. It's going to take you longer. It just is. And
Yeah,
it,
because the music fan is different than the popular culture fan.
right,
They're
right.
different. They're different people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's what I always try to tell people is like, embrace the journey and be okay with the process. Like
Yeah.
you have to be, otherwise it's going to drive you crazy. Because see, in our industry, and this is probably the case in most industry, in a lot of industries, is that there's no one path, straight path to success. Everybody's path to success is different. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
man. I wish I could tell people run fast, run slow, turn around 3 times and bark. And that's how you do it. And if I could do that, I would take that and put it in a box and I sell it to you. But it just doesn't
Yeah,
quite
it
work
just
like that.
doesn't work like that. And kept
Yeah.
sometimes when it comes to music, comes to a song, sometimes songs don't catch right away for whatever reason. It's hard to know sometimes why it doesn't. There's been songs that are like it didn't pop at first, and then it took something else happening along the way for it to catch a wave, and then it became a big record. But it wasn't. It doesn't always. We can't predict what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think for me, Bone Thugs, you mentioned, which is an act that I worked with when I was
Yeah,
at Ruthless. And
yeah.
when I first heard them, I didn't think it was gonna work because I couldn't sing the songs. I didn't know what the heck they were saying. It was like bet 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 bum, but it could I'm like, man, nobody's gonna. That's not gonna work. I can't sing that.
Right.
Little did I know. I mean, those cats sold a lot of records, so
Yeah.
easy saw it.
Absolutely. Shout out to Lee, shout out to Easy E, shout
Yeah,
out to Bone Thugs, Steve Lobel, all these guys that all of y'all that have played a role in their careers. And those guys are still around. It's a beautiful
yeah,
thing. You're still around there. So and that's the beautiful thing about the game is that people have found different ways to hang around. Because I think this sometimes to be in an industry for 30 plus years, you
yeah.
gotta do some you gotta know you gotta be able to do something right. One of the guys I have a lot of respect for is Troy Taylor, right? And
Oh, no question.
and Troy's a good. And what I notice, what he always likes to do, he keeps young people around him, and
He
that's
does.
why. And that's why he's
Troy
been
be
a.
cracking the whip too, though. Troy
Oh
don't
yeah,
play around.
he cracks the whip.
Yeah, but
Because
I mean, he's definitely one of my favorite people in the industry for sure. He's a
for
personal friend too.
yeah, for sure, yeah, because he goes to. I've met him a few times, but when I see him now is at a conference called New School Rules in the Netherlands. I don't
Yes,
know if you heard of New
yes,
School Rules. So
absolutely, yes.
I'm a partner with them. So I actually bring talent from
Nice,
America, and we go to the Netherlands with Hanka Maduro and her husband Greg. They run that conference.
nice. So
So
I
they
got an amazing writer I'll need to connect you with for that opportunity.
for sure, for sure, for sure. Yeah. So man, let's talk about some of the organizations that you were a part of. So you were a part of. I'm sorry, a former member of the Atlanta chapter board for NARIP, National Association of Recording Industry Professionals. And the president said, and I believe this to be true, just from my time as a consummate professional with years of experience in the industry as a record executive and personal artist manager. He's a connector and valued colleague, and you epitomize qualities of today's most successful professionals with desire to learn and grow and help others achieve their goals. I mean, and that resonated with me because that's what I try to be. That's what I,
Yeah,
try to be. The book isn't out yet, Kat, but I wrote a small ebook that will be out
nice.
at the start of this. So when this podcast new season releases, and what I wanted to talk about
What's the
was
book called? What's the book called?
encourage and inspire, and more than a hobby, and how I chose to carve out my professional path in the music industry.
Nice,
And the
nice.
reason it's a short book, it's 40 plus pages. And the reason why I did it was because because of my disability, I can't live in LA. I can't live in the industry cities. I've had to do it from Orlando. And then a lot of times people like me with disabilities, there's not that many opportunities for us
Sure.
to be inside the industry. So I've had to kind of make my own way.
Yeah.
And so for me, I love people, and I've just been fortunate enough to use my ability to my knowledge, and I just want to be an inspiration to people, and I want people to say, "Man, look what he's been able to do," and been able to kind of carve out my own path. And it hasn't been easy, because I had to figure out where do I make the biggest impact, and that is helping new artists. The problem with new artists is they don't have any money.
Yeah.
So when I say, hey, this is my retainer cost, which I think is fair, to somebody who doesn't have any money, they they want to work with me, but it financially doesn't make sense. They can't do it.
Yeah,
So
fair is relative. Fair is relative.
exactly. So
I was having a conversation with Teddy Riley once, and he said, "Man, I'm broke, right?" And I said, "Well, let me take your bank account for one day. You take my bank account for one day, and let's see who's broke." He was like, "Good
exactly,
point."
exactly, yeah, because his version of broke, is a
Two
different
different
is
things.
a different version of broke. So yeah, but I've tried to try to just to stick to what I love to do, and what I love. Like I talked earlier about, kind of rebranding myself, and I branded myself as a guy with education, because education to me is the number one missing link for independent artists, because we're in an industry where we're not regulated per se, as you have to be licensed to do this, and that, like you do in other industries. You can't work in the
Right.
financial industry a lot of times if you don't have a license, or can't become a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. You have
Sure.
to have law licenses to practice these things. In the music
Sure.
industry, in the entertainment industry, it don't work like that.
Yeah,
So
I always tell people it's the one industry you could wake up tomorrow, print out some business cards, and decide that you're in the business, and who's going to tell you you're not? So,
exactly. So therefore, we have a lot of artists who don't necessarily want to learn. They want to create because that's what they love to do. But they have to understand you have to actually learn how to build your business up, because
yeah,
the days are gone of a record company isn't coming to save you.
right.
And if a guy like you, Cap, is coming, you're coming, but you're also coming at a cost.
Yeah,
You're,
no,
you're,
no question.
you know what I'm saying? And your resume warrants you the ability to charge what you charge.
Well, I typically can find out or determine all I need to know about an artist by asking them one simple question when I meet with them. And I'll simply say, "What's your website?" And if you say something other than www dot your name,
Yeah,
if you say, SoundCloud,
yeah,
MySpace ain't your space. Reverb Nation ain't your nation. Like you got to
right.
have your own place
A-
where you can
a-
drive traffic and create the aggregate. So, or
absolutely,
aggregation rather. So,
absolutely, absolutely. So I totally agree. I totally agree, man. Um, you also, which is why I found that this is cool. You are a former member of the Georgia Music Industry Task Force, which served
yes.
the former governor Sonny Perdue on the economic impact of music, film, and entertainment, which is so, man, that is so powerful too, because entertainment matters, man. Because artists and creators, we're the cultural reporters. They talk about
Yes.
what goes on in the community, and they tell stories of people that can't tell their own story. And I
Well,
always,
not only that, when you start talking about in Georgia in particular, all the films and all the arts that's being created here, it drives a lot of commerce. It brings a lot of traffic. There's plane tickets being booked. There's, people are buying flowers. People are using Lyft, Uber. That sort of hotel rooms are getting rented. Like
mhm,
it brings a lot of money to the, community. So that's part of, just the impact that music and film and entertainment has overall.
absolutely. And I mean, and what do you think the importance of like trade associations, like NARIP and things like that, as far as networking goes, versus because these
Oh my
days,
God, it's
yeah,
it's yeah, it's paramount. I mean, it's super important to your career. I mean, it's all really boiling down. I mean, we talk about the law of 6 degrees of separation, the fact that there's no one person more than six people away from you, and I think that's really down to 2 degrees now with the internet. I mean, you
yeah,
can literally touch and reach out to anyone.
right,
So networking is really a very, very vital aspect of success. I mean, just who
absolutely,
most importantly, who knows you. So that's
absolutely,
definitely key.
absolutely. Because yeah, the first time I connected with you, that I want to say it might have been at Terry Bellows' conference.
Ah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's my big brother.
yeah.
Terry, yeah, it's a great dude. I love Terry. Got to get him on the
He's in
pod.
he's in Nashville now, right?
Yeah, yeah, he's in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in fact, we saw each other for the because he is actually interviewing for a job here. He didn't end up getting it. The University of Central Florida. He was interviewing for a job here in Orlando. That's the first time we had seen each other in about 10 years. He's like, I'm coming
Oh
to town.
wow.
I'm coming in town. I said, okay, man, we're gonna get together because it had been it'd been 10 years, 10 plus years since I had
Wow.
seen him. You know,
Wow.
so it's just good to see him. And I mean, talk. He knows everybody. I mean, there's not many people he doesn't know. You know what I mean? So he's one of the. But that might have been one of the first places I probably connected, saw you, and then probably somewhere with Kevin Shine at Roddy Sanchez America in the early days.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we definitely been in a lot of rooms together for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure, for sure, for sure.
Now the
Um,
ultimate room, your podcast.
right, exactly, exactly, exactly. Yeah, so let's talk about some of the awards you won, man. So you received the Phoenix Award, which essentially is like the key to the city.
Yeah, they stopped giving the key to the city away when I get an opportunity. No,
Right,
so
right.
I got a cool plaque. It's a Phoenix Award, which is given by the Mayor Kasim Reed at that particular time. But it's
Yeah,
they did that in lieu of the key to the city.
man, that's awesome, man. I mean, to have your own day, that just sets Kev, the impact you have had in Atlanta. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because not everybody gets their own day like that, but
yeah,
you
man. And a lot of this stuff that's been happening, man. I can't even tell you how. I just been really blessed and fortunate, and I just try to do the right thing by what God's given me to steward. Like I just been
have
trying to
no.
make sure I do the right thing.
I totally understand, man. Because when you find good people in the industry, because unfortunately there's a lot of bad people in this business, a lot of people who don't care, who don't have integrity. So when you find the ones that do, you know, because it's hard. Because that's why people don't like to sometimes pay people for certain. They've got burned so many times. They don't like to
Yeah,
trust people. And
yeah.
unfortunately, I was having a conversation with a young gentleman the other day. That, well, how do you navigate not being able to trust people? You just have to take a chance sometimes. Because
Sure.
there's no we don't have a better business bureau. Where somebody's rating before you do business with them. Doesn't kind of work like that. So
Yeah.
if you've been in this game long enough, we have all gotten burned somewhere along the way.
Unfortunately,
Yeah,
it's been the nature. When you hear that term, it's just business. That probably means somebody got screwed over.
exactly, exactly, man, exactly. And you've also 2016 you received the doctorate of philosophy and was awarded the ambassador. And let me see how to say this right: the ambassadorial appointment and special consultative status with Social Council with the United Nations of Economic and Social Council, which is the highest level of accreditation that you can get. So that's major. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
man. Again, these things. I keep wondering, like, okay, God, what are you doing? Like, all right, you want me to do that? That's where I'm going. So I think the one thing that we don't always realize about music is it has an ability to, transport you into certain places and areas that maybe you had not even considered. And so the UN is definitely one of those things. When I first got the appointment, I showed up in Vienna to get my credentials, and I was waiting for Ashton Kutcher to come out and say, "You being punked, this is not real."
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so I show up, I get my badge, I get my picture taken, and I come back to Atlanta, and I'm like, okay, so I'm a UN ambassador. So it wasn't until the next year I went back for what they call diplomacy training, and at that point, then I learned, what my responsibilities were, what I should be doing, how I could better serve the community and all those things. But it's just been a interesting ride to say the least.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. And like you said, you were. This is another interesting fact about you. You were
Yes.
knighted as into the Royal Order of Knights. And guys, I'm reading this, so I want to make sure I get it right. So if it sounds like I'm reading, it's because I want to get it right out of respect for my guest today. So the Royal Order of Knights of Malta of Africa
Yes.
and the diaspora with all the rights, honors, privileges, and prerogatives which belong to that order in 2018. So again, another pretty
But
cool.
but let me say this now. Going back to our point that we talked about inside of that music and all those things that are in that music. I could go by. I could be called Doctor Capriccieo Scats. I could be called Professor Capriccieo Scats. I could be called Sir Capriccieo Scats. On and on and on and on. But of all those titles, to me, the only title that really matters is Dad. And so I had to really learn that, and bigger and more valuable than all those titles.
Exactly. You're right. Exactly. I hear you. I feel you on that one for sure. I'm not a father, but I understand where you're coming from. You know what I mean? Definitely.
Yeah, is it because
Definitely.
it's the only thing that matters. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
your legacy. The only way you live forever is by touching the future, and so
Absolutely.
ultimately, that's where the importance is at.
Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And the last thing here is, you were selected as Black Enterprise Modern Man in October of 2019, and as a consultant for the Congressional Black Caucus, and you're the second person in history to receive the Congressional Black Caucus lapel pin. That is like wow. I know
Yeah, that was
that.
incredible. That day was
I,
incredible because that was all part of a trip that I took to DC, and I got the congressional pin, and then I later discovered that I was the second person. It was received before me, I think, at noon, and then mine I got it around 3 o'clock, so I was the second person in history to get it.
oh wow, that is ultimately amazing things, man. That's great. That is awesome. So, man, I just want to end the episode kind of talking about something you said, which I love, like your personal slogan. You said your floor is someone else's ceiling. Always be appreciative for where you are, but never stop trying to reach for the best floor. How do you feel
The
that
next
that
floor.
the next floor? That's
I
apples
live by
all
that, so you got
the
to that. I
yeah.
almost have that conversation in my head every single day.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. So like that's my next question. Like how does that help you kind of achieve the different level of successes in your career, both personally and professionally?
Because I'm trying to just be the best me I can be, and I don't even know what that is per se. I'm just allowing God to use me and do as much as I can while I'm here, because we don't know, tomorrow's not promised, so we don't know
Exactly.
how much time we have. So
Exactly.
with the time that I'm given, I'm trying to execute at the highest level possible. People confuse effort with results, and I don't. Like, some people are very effort oriented, but they don't manifest or produce any results. So I'm trying to not only be effort based, but I also want to produce results.
Right.
Real quick, I want to share this with you.
Okay.
People talk about passion and commitment, or
Okay.
passion in our industry all the time. Because I'm so passionate, I'm passionate. And I had a student once that said to me, I'm passionate, so I'm committed. And I said, no, there's a difference between passion and commitment. He said, no, if I'm passionate, I'm committed. I was like, no, there's a difference. So we went back and forth for probably 30 minutes of class, and I couldn't get across to this kid how there's a difference between passion and commitment. And so I got home that night, and I was a little perplexed, sitting on my couch thinking like, man, how do I explain to this kid there's a
Yeah.
difference between passion and commitment? And
Okay.
this thought came to me, and the thought was, if passion were a substitute for commitment, there would not be so many fatherless children. One
Absolutely.
night of passion versus a lifetime of commitment. And
That
so
is
I was
very.
like, whoa. So I
There it
couldn't wait to
is.
get back to school the next day. And I said, if passion were a substitute for commitment, there would not be so many fatherless children. He looked at me and I looked at him, and I dropped the mic. I was like, damn, now tell me there's not a difference between passion and commitment. You can be committed for one night,
That's
but
absolutely.
you know what I mean? You can be passionate rather for one night. But the
Abs-
commitment comes in when you got to raise that child. That's the difference
no, and
between passion and commitment.
that is true. That's something within our community, specifically with in our black community, that we're just not really talking about and bringing it to the forefront. That we have to be responsible when we make those decisions.
Yeah.
And responsible, like you said, because one night of passion, and young ladies have to be responsible too, because look at a person's character, look at a man's character, look at the other things because those are the things that's going to determine how type of father that brand's going to be.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and things like that. And you got to be smart. You got to look at the history. If the man's already got 3, 4 kids already before you, and he's not taking care of them,
Chances are.
chances are, what makes you think you're going to be the one? So you just have to be just what it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. But like I said, Cap, it's been such a pleasure, man. How can people find you before we get out of here?
Man, I'm at Capriccio on all social media platforms. Capriccio. Now, baby, tell me what you want to do with me. No. So I'm Capriccio on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and I'm very I respond to everyone as much as I can, at least. So
No, you
I
definitely
think
did.
I'm one of the most accessible executives there are,
No
or
man,
there is.
I said it's been a pleasure, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So I got a lot more respect for your work and what you've done, and as somebody who is trying to make my own way in my own way to do the things I love to do, and I've been fortunate, you know, to be a part of some pretty cool things. You know, been to 7 different countries. You know, been featured
Yeah,
in about 11 or 12 magazines and things like that,
nice.
sharing my story. And I say that not to brag, but I just say that because if I could share my story and let people know there's still a way to do the things you love to do. And it's going to be tough. I have a lot of tough days, but it's because I believe in what I do and I know I'm making a difference. And that's
Yeah,
why I continue to do what I do. So it's people like yourself and that keep me encouraged to keep doing what I do. And I just, like I said, I just want you to know that. And it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure
my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
to have you on today, man. So, guys, with that being said, this has been episode number 66. And this is your host, Terrell Peart. Until next time, I'm out of here. Peace.